Hi, I'm Amy Bach, Executive Director and co-founder of United Policyholders, and we are here with a catch-up with two very knowledgeable people who have good information to share. I'm here today with Bill Wallace and Matt Everson. They are based in the North Bay of California. They are the authors of a new book called The Claims Game, and we are here to impart some nuggets of wisdom aimed at builders to help you be the most effective advocate for your clients after wildfires and to kind of get up to speed on that, the claim game. So welcome, Bill. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing your time with United Policyholders today. You were very helpful to us in our Roadmap to Recovery program in the Santa Rosa area after the 2017 fires. So why don't we just start with you sharing with the viewers why and how a local builder in a wildfire impacted area can be a recovery hero.
Yeah, I think we could start with how we figured this out. I was at your Roadmap to Recovery. It was raining. The room was packed. The fire department told us to take no more people. And everybody was there for a specific idea, which was how to prove this loss. And you were talking on stage about a scope of loss report. And that's what these people need to get from a local builder. And I noticed some very visceral anger and tension rising in the room. And I asked you afterwards, how come? And what the heck is a scope of loss report? And you said, it's an estimate, and they know they're not going to be able to get one proper from their builders locally because they're either going to be too busy, they're not going to know how to do it. It's just, it's a challenge. And I said, I could do that. And you said, no, you can't. That's just way too much. And I said, no, I'll figure this out. And that's where I bumped into Bill, and we started talking about how we could do this. How could we? Our community was crushed. 5,000 homes were burned. People were displaced left and right. And we didn't know, none of us know. I don't think any people that come into these disasters know what happens after the disasters is even more of a disaster sometimes. And the way that some people get treated by their insurance companies is really pretty cruel. And so we decided we wanted to help our folks here in Santa Rosa and the Sonoma County area. And I have a lot of background in the world of financial planning and insurance, so I could talk to people about this situation. And Bill is an expert builder. And so together, we handshook a 50-50 split deal where I would talk to the people and Bill would do the estimating. And it's worked really, really well. And that's what I told you as this became successful, was that we don't want to do this. We don't feel like this should be a job and a career, and we don't want to chase after disasters all around the country. What we felt like was the right thing to do was to open source this idea and put it into something that other people could take, not just the knowledge, but the processes of how this works, and help and become heroes in their communities. Bill and his estimates have gotten over $150 million for people throughout California that the insurance companies weren't originally going to release. And that's what I'm talking about by being a hero. So there won't be everybody. Most builders are going to be busy. They're going to want to build because that's where they make their money. But there's going to be a handful of people in every community, I think, that wants to help and has the know-how to help. And if they can use our book and your resources as guidelines, I think it helps everybody. It lifts all the boats in that rising water.
Yeah. Well, so you know, you're reminding me that, you know, when we first connected, you came to our organization and said, you know, I want to be helpful. I want to support the recovery. And we talked about the fact that there's this this unique process in insurance claims where when you're trying to figure out how much the insurance company owes the homeowner, it can get very funky. And I said, you know, one of the things that UP has been preaching for years is the gospel of the scoop on scope, which is what the name of one of our publications, where we try to explain to people. They think, oh, I've had a loss, I have insurance, my insurance company is going to take care of all this for me, right? And it's going to be okay because I have insurance. But what happens is that there very often is a dispute over how much the insurance company owes to replace the home that burned. So over the years, people are very familiar with an estimate, right? You know what an estimate is. You call a plumber and he or she comes out and gives you an estimate, and that tells you how much it's going to cost to pay them to do the work. But it's a little deeper with total loss when you're trying to figure out what the price tag of replacing the home is, right? So Bill, what is a scope of loss? What does that even mean? And how is it different from an estimate?
So scope of loss, like in regards to the insurance company, you're talking about breaking down a house from the nitty gritty, from the foundation, every board, every nail, all the finishings from flooring to finished carpentry, plumbing, electrical. You're breaking every aspect of that out, and it ends up being normally, what is our normal report size? 100 pages or so. So you're talking about a very detailed report. If you're talking about a regular contractor's estimate, I might be able to knock that out in a few pages. So you're talking.
That's right. So that's where that big disconnect is, right?
Right.
Like, for if you're a builder and you're watching this thing, you know how to estimate a job, right? You do. You get your sub bids, you get your, you know where you get your materials in your area, and you can kind of rough it out. And that's generally how you present to a potential client. Well, this is how much I would have to charge you to do this project, right? But in the insurance claim process, that doesn't work. Why doesn't that work, Bill or Matt?
Well, it's the detail. Insurance is going to look for, they basically need to know everything about the house to come up with what, Matt explains this a little bit better, but the reinsurance. So you're basically trying to package that up and give it to the reinsurance. But the idea is,
there's fraud in insurance ever since the day insurance started. And so as a business, the insurance has to protect its own best interests. A builder can look at a project and say within minutes, usually, what he's going to come up with, because he'll say it on a square foot basis.
Right.
I'm going to build that for $400 a square foot. I don't care how many boards I need to buy. I'll figure that out when I'm in the job. The insurance company is not got enough data on a per square foot basis. And to turn around on their end, a lot of people don't know they're going to make a claim to their insurance company. And that's called reinsurance. And they have to provide data that proves why they paid out what they paid out. We can be cynical about this whole thing, and I could go on and on about the cynicism I have about the whole process, but I don't want to be cynical today. I want to understand the nuts and bolts, and the nuts and bolts are a regular builder doesn't ever want to sit down in front of a spreadsheet software and push out 50 to 100 pages of detail on something he's going to build. So that's why the claimants in these, the people that have lost their homes to damages like wildfires, they can't find builders that want to sit down and do this.
Yeah.
The insurance companies may or may not know that. But they're not really helping people understand what kind of detail they need. And so the detail is intense. It is every board, it is every piece of drywall, it is every cubic yard of cement, it is labor hours and the charging for that labor hours. And the software that the industry uses for that can give you a good start, but you really have to have a local builder that's an expert, because in essence, what you're doing with these scope of loss reports, different than a bid, is you're rebuilding the home in a two-dimensional manner, line by line, page by page, from the foundation, like Bill was saying, all the way up to the roof and everything inside, including the soft costs like architectural costs, permitting costs, and this crazy stuff we can talk about later called code upgrades. But it's a very complicated sort of estimate compared to what a normal builder will do. And that's why when builders come across a disaster zone or they live near one and they're asked to provide these estimates, they may try it and then they get rejected, and they're like, that's just, we don't do that, because
Right.
their normal method of estimating just isn't going to play.
Right. So you have this situation where, builders, like we were saying, they know how to estimate a job, but they don't typically do it with the level of detail that an insurance company wants to see, right? So insurance companies have developed an approach in the last 20 years. They actually went and they had software created for themselves that would help them estimate what they think they owe. And as we were saying earlier, very often there's a really big difference between what the insurance company software says it's going to cost to put a house back and what it's actually going to cost in real life. And so you guys live in real life, right? So, and UP recognizes that people are often in the situation, and we say this, like computers don't rebuild houses, builders do it, right?
Right.
So we want to help builders and, do what they do, which is not paperwork usually, right? They know how to estimate, but they don't know how, it's not so much that they don't know how to, but they just are not, they don't price a project the way a computer does, right? Mm-hmm. So you have this really big gap, and that's where you guys came in the North Bay, and that's where builders can come in if they understand the process, and they can help their client play the claim game, right? So let's get a little deeper. So tell me about the process that the software and how insurance companies go about trying to price a project and make their offer to the homeowner of what they think they owe.
You want me to take that one? Sure. I mean, typically, what happens after a fire, it's incredible, right? You've lost everything in these type of wildfires that we experience here. There was nothing left but chimneys and barbecues. One fireman told me it was all ash, nothing left, and so that's destructive enough to a psyche, and it's a very traumatic event for individuals. And then a month or so later, their initial adjuster from the insurance company is usually pretty friendly, and they come out though a month or so later with an estimate. And this is where the problems start to spark for a lot of people, is the estimate. They've already been talking since the fire. They've already been talking to their friends that are builders or referrals to builders or whatever. And they've got a price in their mind. A 2,000 square foot home at $400 a square foot is going to be $800,000. Right. And then the estimate comes to them from the insurance company adjuster at $530,000. And so there's a $200,000, $300,000 gap. We've seen as much as 50% under real price. Right. And I don't know, I've never been an adjuster, so I don't know how they're trained. My suspicion is that they're not builders ever. They're almost never a builder. So they don't know how to build a home. Right. And number two, they don't know how to build a home here. And right. So even if they could build one in Pennsylvania, they don't know how to build one here. Right. And so that's two problems out of the gate. And I think the insurance company, to try and give them some credit, is trying to help these adjusters by giving them the tool of that software, so that they don't have to try and find a builder, because they know the builders in that area are going to be busy building. And so that's, again, we can be cynical or we can just be nuts and bolts. The reality is that inspires a lot of anxiety in people when they see a $530,000 bid that they've talked to 4 or 5 local builders and they know it's going to be over $800,000. And now they don't know how to close that gap. And if they go to talk to builders about getting an estimate like their insurance adjuster has told them to do, they can't do it. They cannot find a builder that wants to take the time. Bill's a bit of an anomaly. Okay. Most builders get into building because they like to build. They do not sit in front of a computer and data enter. And Bill's able to do that with skill and also build. That's pretty hard to find. But you don't have to be an expert at data entry. And that's why we went out and developed a basic Excel spreadsheet to help people with that. But it's really just a few individuals in these towns are going to be wanting to help in this way. And so we wanted to be able to give them a guidebook for what we've developed and what we've seen. So that's, to answer your question, that initial part is that adjuster's estimate is almost always off. Right. Almost always off.
Yeah. Right, because computers don't build, and also because we've learned that the software that a lot of insurers use is kind of a feedback loop. So if they, from their own offers, so like if they offer somebody $250 a square foot, let's say on a project, even though that's completely low, they'll put that information, it goes into the software program. So it just kind of is this vicious cycle. So let's get back to, let's say I'm just a builder. I'm watching this video. I've got a copy of your book. Do I have to learn Xactimate? Do I have to learn Symbility? Do I have to learn one of those programs that the insurance companies are using?
I mean, I would say you don't have to necessarily learn it, but it's good to know how to read it and see maybe what the issues with the program are from the get-go. I mean, we just explained why the estimates are always low. A couple of tips for builders, if they're looking at these reports, they're gonna find out right off the bat that labor, no matter pretty much where you're at, especially on the West Coast, is going to be way under, even if your material costs are pretty close.
Meaning the software, the pricing they have for labor is not realistic in a lot of areas, right? Especially.
Correct.
Well,
Give me an example is, I don't know what it's currently at as of about a year ago. The Xactimate software was pricing framing at $4 a square foot in Sonoma County. If you called around Sonoma County and asked anybody that does framing, what are they charging per square foot? They were charging $40, so 10 times more. And if you're looking at that in the labor rates throughout the plumbing, the electrical, and all the other laborers that are coming in to do finish work and other stuff, what we've found, our experience is that software has a hard time keeping up with the demand surge that happens.
right.
Okay. And we can talk about that term, but basically it's the supply and demand. 5,000 homes burned down. We already had a shortage of contractors in this area. Now we had an acute shortage of contractors. And in any market, if you know that you have 100 different offers and you're the only one that can build, then you're going to start to charge for that. And that's what happened. Our square footage rates went from about $260, $270 a square foot before the fires to today at around 500. So they've almost doubled.
And so there's demand surge, which often follows a disaster. You just explained that. There's problems with the software that the insurers use it's based often on tract home pricing in Iowa or something, as opposed to building in an area like yours where, the cost of living is higher and everything's more expensive and all that. So we've got those. And then there is, so there's the business reality for a builder that, you don't get paid to sit there, providing the kind of level of the detail that the insurer wants. So how, let's talk about the mechanics of scoping and estimating wildfire loss and what your advice is to a builder who has not really been through this before. And wants, people they want to get the jobs, they want to help out in their area, but they don't have the time to sit around going back and forth with an insurance company. So give me some guidance for that person.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? This takes some time. Each case, and we've done over 200 different estimates now, takes me on average 20 hours and takes Bill on average. Well, it takes me on average about 10 hours to 15 hours of talking and going back and forth on emails, and takes him about the same amount of time just performing the estimate. So it's a 20 to 30 hour project per estimate minimum. And if the home is custom or bigger or whatever, or the problems with the insurance company are more challenging, it could take more time. So you're right. A builder builds and they look at building a $1 million home and they're going to get a $150,000 profit on that, if not a little bit more. And so why do they want to sit here and charge $5,000 for an estimate? It's not the best way for them to do business if they're only focused on money. If they want to focus on their community, this is a tremendous thing for them to do. And you can kind of do both. I think that there's two. If you're out there watching this as a builder, there's two ways you can approach this. One is you're going to be building. This may be the most lucrative time frame in your life. That the disaster has wrecked your town, but it's going to make your life as far as an economic windfall that's about to come your way.
If you can figure out how to play the claims game.
If you can figure out how to play the game. So my thought is, if I'm a builder and I just want to build homes, great. I'm going to have so many homes to build. I'm going to hire somebody that their job is to just read this book and walk people through this and build these estimates for us. If you're just going to build 1 or 2 or 3 homes, it might not be worth your time. It might be better to hire a firm like a BW Builder or somebody like us. Or you could just do that as part of your process, not charge for it, just bake it into the cost of your overhead. Or you make it a small business. I can see a builder partnering with like a local Rotarian who's retired, or a Elks member, or somebody that's in a BNI group, or some other of these organizations where people are always looking for business and always looking to help. And, finding somebody that's, on my side of the equation, organized and friendly and able to talk to people. And on the builder side, you don't necessarily have to be unfriendly, but just, focusing on the building and the estimating. And then you could really, I think if you partner with, like, say, an architect in town, somebody that's part of the city, somebody like United Policyholders, you bring together a team of people. I really envision communities doing this as a service to get, if Santa Rosa, and goodness, when your city burns down like ours did, the city leaders don't have much time to sit down and discover how to help people. But I think that a smart city, if you look at, like, one of the statistics we've got in the book is in the 2018 fires that happened in California, there was a statistic of about $150 billion of loss to the state of California. That's massive. And if we look at just Santa Rosa, we lost high income earners. They left the town. They didn't want to wait around to rebuild. They're not coming back. We lost the bottom end of the spectrum, the people that rent and are on the lower side of the income world because they couldn't find a place to rent.
Right.
We lost a lot of economic engine. And typically, you can tell people this better than we can, Amy, it takes 10 years for a town to recover.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, I mean, you guys built a business model pretty quickly that filled a need that United Policyholders had identified, which is, we say to people, look, the best way to get your claim for your dwelling replacement on track and keep it on track is to reach an agreement with your insurance company on what the reasonable cost of rebuilding the home that you had would be, right? And therefore, what we have learned over the years is the simplest thing is to find somebody like you guys and pay them a set amount of money to do that for you. And we'll say to people, it's frustrating. People say, well, I already paid for insurance. Why do I have to pay somebody to help me? It's really just because the system, insurers have built the system to serve their needs, and the reality is, if you want to get through it, and you want to get, as relatively painlessly as possible, paying somebody to get you a scope of loss and an estimate that will stand up side by side with what the insurance company has put together and can be compared apples to apples is the best way. So how did you decide what you were going to charge, or how have you been charging for that service of giving people, arming them and their builders with this work product?
Yeah, out of the gate, I was uncomfortable charging for this at all. I didn't like the idea that people that just lost everything were going to pay me and Bill to further their disaster. But it does take time. So we had to find a way to charge. We actually asked you and your crew over there, like, what would be fair in your mind? And we came up with the number that we put in the book, which is somewhere between $2,000 to $10,000, depending on the time inputs.
Yep.
On my end, I felt like a flat rate versus, or an hourly rate versus a percentage of a claim is more fair. Yep. Engineers don't come out there and give you a soils report and say, I'll charge you 5% of your insurance claim.
Right.
They charge based on their hours. And so to me, it also meant that we could remove one of the common replies that insurance companies give claimants, which is that builder's just padding that estimate. Right. Yeah. Well, if I'm just building it at a flat rate and I'm not tied into your insurance claim payout by a percentage, and I'm not casting shade on anybody or anything like that, but if I'm at that arm's length of a situation, then no, there is no conflict of interest there. I'm just like an engineer. I'm just like an architect. I was paid for my expertise and my time.
Yep.
So there isn't a conflict. There isn't any reason for me to inflate these estimates, because all that does is means my next estimate won't be believed by the insurance company. That was our philosophy. Insurance companies still, every single report we get back to somebody, the initial response from the insurance adjuster is, these guys are crazy. These numbers are way too high. Right. Every single time.
Every single time. So, okay. So let's talk about, first of all, where are the hot spots? What cost items do you have the most disputes with insurers over? Is it, you already mentioned labor. Any other categories?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it probably varies from insurer to insurer. We found, and probably shouldn't name any names in this talk, but we found that some insurance companies handle this very well, and we never hear from their claimants. We found that certain insurance companies seem to have a claims game going on, and more than half of our estimates are done for one particular company. So there's, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, as I think about it, because I'm the one that's usually talking to the people that we're working for. Their insurance companies are pushing back on code upgrades.
Okay.
They're pushing back on labor costs.
Okay.
Lately, they've been trying to focus in on the quality. So when you're using a software like Xactimate, you have to choose, is it a scale of 1 to 5?
No, it's basically from builder's grade to high grade to premium grade.
Okay, so there's a level of different quality trim that you have to select, say for a baseboard or for an oven or whatever. And again, because where we live, most people, especially the ones that lived in the wealthier areas that lost their homes, everything was high grade.
Right.
And insurance companies adjuster might come from Oklahoma, where nobody's high grade. And
Right.
I'm sorry, Oklahoma. But the thing is like they aren't familiar with this area. California, and especially the Bay Area, is just insane with the price of real estate and the price of everything. And so out of the gate, when they see these numbers, it doesn't compute to them. It's not like what they've seen in Florida. It's not like what they've seen in Arizona or Colorado or other places. It's a different ballpark. And then also with the building codes, we in California focus a lot on energy and a lot on green stuff. They call it Title 24. Not that many other states are that particular about that. And in a lot of states, what we've heard from adjusters is that the county or city building departments sort of, almost like a card game. We'll pay for that. I don't think we're going to require them to do that. Even though that's in the code, we're not going to force them to do that.
Right.
That's just not the case in California. If it's in the code, it will not pass the planning commission, and those plans can't get stamped. So
Yep.
those are some of the areas.
Yeah. And then Bill, how do you go about pricing code upgrades on a project that may or may not get built? And we'll talk about that. Meaning, like, we know most people, they don't want to put back the exact same house they had, right? They want to go bigger, smaller, downsize, modern, whatever. But what the insurance company owes them is the as was the house they had, right? So that's another reason, right, why your work is so important, because you've got to establish this sort of fictional hypothetical cost, right? Because knowing most people don't want to do that. But then again, that's one of the biggest challenges for a builder, right? Why do I want to put all this time into pricing a project that I know the client isn't going to pay me to do? I want to do the project that the client wants me to do. But in order to do that, I got to help them get that settlement. So Bill, how do you go about that pricing code upgrades for the as was replacement?
Yeah, as far as in particular the code upgrades, I mean, you're basically figuring out what the claimant had. You're building basically your estimate based on the house that they had. Code upgrades are obviously something that your county or city are requiring via building code. So you're basically going, okay, if I built this house with these new codes in it, what is the difference of that cost? So if I have to make a house ready for an electric vehicle charging, I have to upgrade the framing, the foundation, Title 24, as Matt said, what is the extra cost in that? And the difference is basically your code upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
And most policies, I know Matt knows way more about this, is they have a percentage of the policy that's dedicated towards that.
So, but you break those out so that's
Correct.
what values, right? Is that the adjuster, you can show the adjuster, these are the code upgrades, and this is what
And Matt has a diagram here.
We've put together about a 35 line spreadsheet.
Okay, right.
With the help of somebody from your organization, actually.
Yeah.
But what you can see here is what we have is the item water heater.
Right.
Typically people would have a 50-gallon water heater around here. That's not necessarily, and this is where it gets a little sticky with code upgrades. There's nothing in the code that says you can't use a 40 or 50-gallon water heater. Mm-hmm. However, if you try, you're going to fail the Title 24 test.
Huh. Oh, okay.
Okay. So in essence, you're not able to use that water heater. You're going to have to use an on-demand heater. And that let's say the original water heater would have been $1,200. If your water heater goes out today, you call a plumber, he's going to come out and put another one in. He doesn't need to go and upgrade to code. But when you're rebuilding a home, now the city wants to see it built to code. And so that $1,200 water heater is now a $2,400 on-demand system. And so you've got a $1,200 difference there because the code forced a more expensive option. And then, so what we do in our table is, and we've got an example of this in the book, is we show the item, what the original construction may have cost in our estimate, and it's totally an estimate, actual code upgrade cost, and then the difference, which is that $1,200 in that example. And then important is, what is the code requirement that's forcing that? The insurance companies want to know.
Right. And the adjusters don't know that. And that's a big value add you can bring as a local builder is, that, the code, you're familiar with it. But you have to take the time to break it out for them. So
and just to finish the point real quick, is a lot of builders don't know because the architect or the plan drafts person is the one that draws up the home, and those plans are submitted to the county and or the city, and they're either going to pass or they're not. They always get failed based on some of these things missing. So the builder actually gets those plans once they're out of the planning, and so a lot of builders are just building based on what's on those specs. They don't necessarily know, in particular, they don't know the actual code. Right. And so it's helpful, I think, for builders that are contemplating doing this to find a good architect in town, to find a good draftsperson, to find somebody that is hyper familiar with because the codes upgrade and change every 3 years. And so it's not a static thing. So yeah, having somebody in town at the city or the county planning department, and also an architect together as a crew, kind of come together. We used somebody from your organization to talk about how the insurance companies need, what data do they need? Mm-hmm. And what we determined is they need that difference, and they need to be shown what the code is. What exactly is that code?
Yep. So. Yeah, no, you bring tremendous value when, in that you have information that the adjuster really should have, but doesn't.
Also, the software company we're talking about doesn't include anything about code upgrades.
Yeah. Right. So okay, we're getting kind of close to where we need to wrap up. So I want to hit kind of the heart of I think a question that a lot of builders are going to have, which is, okay, I've read your book. I did the spreadsheet. I'm helping my community. I'm helping my clients get paid so that I can then get hired to do the work and do what I do. But you said that the insurance companies kick back every single one of your reports. So then what do you do as a builder to defend your work? Are there limits on your ability to negotiate on a client's behalf with an insurance company? And just talk to me about that.
Yeah, one of our very first client was an attorney couple. They were both attorneys, and I utilized their knowledge about how to prepare for a case. And every single estimate that we develop, we are thinking down the road that this is going to show up in court. It never does, but that's our thought process. Right. And so, in other words, what I told Bill when we first started was, hey, I know you have all this stuff up here, but that doesn't matter. Make a file and update that file all the time as to what local builders are charging for their hourly rates, what subs are charging, and what the material prices are. Right. So that when that adjuster comes back and says, no way, this is crazy. Okay, well, here's a sub that just charged us $40 a square foot for framing on the home we just built. All right. If you think it's $4 a square foot, I'm confident that this claimant would love that person to come up and show here, as long as they're licensed. And so that's sort of the game. That's the claims game right there, is this back and forth, and a builder reading our book will have the ability to answer a lot of these questions. So yeah, you have to be able to prove. You can't just say, I know it because I'm a builder. Right. You have to be able to prove, and that's easy. You should have invoices, you should have payroll, you should have, purchases at Home Depot or wherever your supply stores are. A lot of those supply companies, Lowe's, Home Depot, even the local guys, the lumber yards, they have price listings online. And if they don't, they're happy to supply them, especially after a disaster like this.
Exactly. I called and they were more than happy to give any pricing whatsoever, especially if you tell them what you're doing. they'll
Mhm,
put their entire price list for you.
That's
So
great.
that's data, right?
So you, I mean, coming out on the other end and of one of the record-breaking wildfires in California history, you know, the Atlas and the Tubbs fires, and you know, you were able to really make a very important contribution, I think, to a lot of households' ability to recover by doing what you've been doing. So you know, do you ever get any grief, like you're acting like a public adjuster and you're not allowed to do that? And how did you deal with that?
We do all the time. Well, it's an interesting phenomenon. Even today, if your home's on fire, within 15 minutes, a public adjuster is waiting outside for you. I'm not going to talk one way or another about public adjusters. I'm not licensed as one, and neither is Bill, so we can't act like one. And what all that means to me in my interpretation is that I can't give insurance advice, and we can't give insurance advice. So we don't. We give opinions. And my opinion is based on what's available publicly. The insurance code is right on the internet, right? Someone's insurance policy is right there. If you have the ability to read, that's not insurance advice, that's literacy, right? So I can read and I can give my opinion, and we're constantly, every single thing that we do, and including this book, will have footnotes that say, we don't give insurance advice, we don't give financial advice, we don't give legal advice. Go check with those experts. We're happy to give you our opinion. Now, the insurance companies, unless we're on the build, so this is an important topic. If you're the builder building the home, you can get the claimant to provide you permission to speak on their behalf, almost like a public adjuster would do. If you're just doing these estimates, the insurance companies don't, the adjuster won't really talk to you unless it's about the estimate itself.
Okay.
And half the time they don't want to do that. But you know, there is a limitation there. So what we've done, and everybody can do this their own way, is one, we've got what the securities world, the stocks and bonds world used to call a great wall. Bill never sees anything about the client, never sees anything about their insurance policy, never sees anything at all about their amount of money available. Never.
Okay.
And I can prove that.
Okay.
So we keep that separate so that nobody can ever question that his estimate was built to suit for the claims amount. Okay. I can talk to people on a very general basis. So a lot of times clients will send me and look at what my adjuster just sent me. I can't believe it. Right. And I'll pick up the phone and I'll call them. I say, hey, remember, I'm not an adjuster. I can't help you with this. And then they say, oh yeah. And then I say, but here's my opinion. So
yeah,
just an opinion, but be careful, because
right.
if you're adjusting, you're going to get in trouble for adjusting.
Right. So talk about what you know, right? Talk about the pricing in the area, the estimate you've put together, and steer clear of the what
I suspect the insurance companies want to try and pin us as adjusters, and then they can delete our estimate. So we try and do everything to show that we don't give advice. And it's important, and it's misdirective, right? It's not the point. The point is, we haven't even said this word yet, but it's the most important thing here. These three words: measure of indemnity.
Right.
And what is the cost to rebuild? That's it. That's the point. And that's what we've been paid to provide an estimate for. So stick to that. If the insurance company is trying to push you one way or the other, bring them right back to, hey, yeah, that's all good and well. You haven't told me what you think about this dollar amount that BW Builder provided for me. I need to know whether you think that's good or not. And if it's not good, in your opinion, Mr. Adjuster, Mrs. Adjuster, I need you to put in writing for me why. And I need it to be detailed. And this is how you can get over these hurdles. You just have to continue to pull the adjuster back from their car sales tricks, I call it. They're trying to, when an airplane's getting shot down, it throws off chaff. And the chaff is designed to attract the bullets and missiles going at the airplane. And so if you use this analogy with an insurance company, they don't want to pay out all this money. That's not what they're in business for. So they're throwing chaff off all the time from their adjusters, trying to take you from the focus, which is, what is my loss? If you get to what your loss is, then you can confidently enter a contract with a builder. Then you can confidently go about shopping for a replacement home. But they will do, in my experience and our experience, and granted, we only get the people that are having trouble, right? So there's a lot of people that their insurance adjusters are just doing a great job. But where the folks that are bumping into these problems, it's usually because they're not focusing on the one important aspect here, which is we got to get to that number. We hired a builder, we paid him a lot of money. You're not focusing on that, Mr. Adjuster. I need you to come back and understand that that's all I care about right now.
Right, right, right. And just so, our viewers understand, measure of indemnity is just a fancy way of saying, put you back where you were before the loss, which
Yep.
is, that's the entire purpose of insurance. And that's the object of the claim game, right? Is like, your client, your potential client,
Mhm.
needs to get back to point A from where they started. And your job is to figure out how much will it cost them to get back to point A. Even if they're not actually going to rebuild that house, they still need that hypothetical, theoretical, as was scope and estimate. And that's what the readers of your book can
And
produce.
it's not only important for their insurance claim. A lot of times you found up here in Santa Rosa, your study showed 60 something, 7% of people were underinsured. So if you have an $800,000 measure of indemnity and you have $700,000 of insurance, you now have a $100,000 asset loss, which is helpful in taxes. So that number, that bare number of what it would have cost to rebuild the home that was there as it was with today's code upgrades, that's the measure of indemnity. And it's not just important for this claim, it's important for your potential future tax losses as well. So it's a super important number. And I don't know why the insurance in all of the people we've talked to, their insurance adjusters never mention this. This is the key to it all. So that's why we try to demystify it in the book, is we pound on that a lot in the book, is get the adjuster to agree that this number is good. And they're going to try to say, no, our number's good. Their number's crazy. So that's why the builder has to have the evidence to prove, because we are the expert. I can build an IKEA cabinet. Bill can build a home, and he is an expert at building. And the adjuster from whatever state, California or whatever other state, they have never built a home. Almost 100% of the time, they've never built a home. So there's no debating. That's why this is a bit of a game, right? I know, just because I know how insurance company operations work, this is never going to court. When you've got an estimate from an expert local builder and an estimate from an adjuster,
Right.
The local builder's estimate wins every time.
Every time.
So it's just a game of dissuasion, a game of this misdirection, whatever kind of game it might be. Your job as a claimant, somebody that's a victim, and the builder's job is to keep focusing that insurance company on that number. Bring it back. That's all good. What's wrong with our number? If you don't like our number, what's wrong with it?
Yep. And that is exactly the guidance that UP has been telling people is, get a good local builder to give you the pricing, and the insurer can't really, there's not much they can say about it. It is what it is, right? So basically a builder can help their clients win the claim game or play the claim game, come out on the other side.
Understand it, understand what's happening.
Right.
A lot of builders take it personally when someone says, like at the insurance company, your numbers are crazy. They take it personally. They're ethical people. They're not trying to lie or commit insurance fraud. And all of a sudden, this guy from the insurance company out of nowhere is telling them he's a liar.
Right.
They take it personally. So it's not a personal thing. This is their methodology.
Yeah.
Understanding their methodology. It's like if I go to Germany and ask for beer in French, I might go thirsty. If I ask for it in German, ein Bier bitte, I get a beer.
Right.
So this is the nature of our book. Understand that what's happening here so you can approach it better and you can get through it better.
Well, I really appreciate, first of all, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you did for your community and are continuing to do. And the book, I think, is an important resource. And we are looking forward to helping builders in other wildfire impacted areas benefit from the approach that you took. And of course, we were thrilled that you were able to offer the service at an affordable price for people without losing money, which
nobody helps Californians, and I know you're across the country, but nobody helps Santa Rosans more than United policyholders. Nobody. And so it's our pleasure to build this thing out and give you the proceeds of this book so you can do this for other communities. And we just felt like this would help in those efforts, in that roadmap to recovery. If you can incorporate a few good-hearted builders to do what Bill and I have done, the communities can just get back on their feet. So it was our intention all along to help our community, not be nationwide in this. And it's our intention to help you all along, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without United Policyholders and Amy Bach. So thank
Well,
you.
we appreciate that very much. And, we have used some of your approach. And, remember, we brought you out to Boulder and to for the East Troublesome Fire in 2020 in Colorado, because it doesn't really matter where you are in the country. This dynamic is the same. The insurers want to do it their way. The homeowner needs a fair settlement. And the best way to get a fair settlement is to talk to the people who know what they're talking about in terms of construction pricing. And that would be people like you guys. So thank you again for all the work you've done. Thank you for supporting our organization, for donating the proceeds from the sale of your book. It's a very generous and really wonderful. But more importantly, thank you for teaching other builders in out there in the world that they can be an incredible recovery hero and still make money, not lose money, right? That's kind of the end of it. Yeah. Any final words before we wrap up?
No, I mean, just thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to encourage, there's going to be a good number of people out there that just they're not willing to do this. They're too focused on what they're doing. But I think that you in particular have a great way of attracting those people with big hearts. And so this is just another tool that you've got in your box. And we're just excited to get it out there.
Well, thank you. And thank you for making it work. This whole idea of being able to pay somebody, not an exorbitant amount of money, to give you the tools as a homeowner to get a fair settlement is invaluable. So thank you again. And with that, that's a wrap of this episode of Catching Up with a Reconstruction Expert. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Okay.